You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, I'm Nina Torralba, PumaPodcast. You're listening to Teka Teka News. In this episode,
We tell these stories to demonstrate to our guests that animals are composed of unique individuals too. Each individual of a species has their own private lives. And that way, people can understand that if you hurt an individual wildlife, you're actually also like hurting a certain person.
in Davao City are two different tourist attractions. In the Malagos watershed up north is the Philippine Eagle Center, a reserve for the Philippine eagle and other wildlife. And in Poblacion District, at the heart of the city, is the Bone Collector Museum, with over 6,000 specimens of animal skeletons on display. One houses the living, and the other the dead. But in visiting both, you may find yourself asking the same question: how do we value our wildlife?
The Philippine Eagle Center is situated in the last remaining lowland forest of Davao City. It's called the Malagos Watershed. So Malagos Watershed is a 240-hectare forest island habitat, and that in a way sets the natural environment for the Philippine Eagle Center.
That's Dr. Jason Ibanez, Director for Research and Conservation at the Philippine Eagle Foundation. The foundation was established in 1987 to pursue conservation efforts for the Philippine eagle, which is classified as a critically endangered species by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN. At the foundation's Philippine Eagle Center, the birds have a place to call home, and they're cared for by volunteers and conservation experts.
We have Philippine eagles at the center. Some of them are actually captive bred, meaning they were bred in captivity using pairs that we take care of and breed in captivity. But some of them are also rescued birds, injured or sick Philippine eagles that unfortunately we can no longer release back to the wild after rehabilitation. So the goal of the Philippine Eagle Center is to give these animals a comfortable life. Some of them are used for breeding, so that way we don't lose their reproductive potential. So for instance, si Philippine Eagle Ariela at saka si Philippine Eagle Matatag. Ariela is female, Matatag is male. They're both parang disabled. Ariela lost several of her toes to hunting. So definitely hindi na siya pwede mag-survive sa wild. And then Matatag lost his wing to shooting and hunting. But they're breeding at the Philippine Eagle Center. And these new eaglets will then be released back to the wild so that they can experience life in the wild and they can also contribute to the population. Some of the birds, unfortunately, can no longer breed. So we use them as ambassadors.
While many of these important activities take place behind the scenes, the eagles that become ambassadors live on display at the center. Open daily, the center welcomes visitors to walk through lush foliage and gently sloping terrain to catch a glimpse of these birds and other wildlife.
The first thing that would greet everyone when you visit the Philippine Eagle Center are huge tall trees. These are lawaan trees or endemic native trees, which are normally found within a Philippine eagle habitat. And then once you go inside the Philippine Eagle Center, of course, you'll see our visitors lounge, and there's a pond close to the lounge. And there you would already see native species of wildlife, including the silvery kingfisher, which is an endemic kingfisher in the Philippines. You can also see sailfin lizards. This is again an endemic species of reptile basking under the sun or feeding on the foliage. We also have rescued raptor species like the Philippine serpent eagle. We also have the white-bellied sea eagle. We also have rescued crocodiles. We have rescued Philippine deers and Philippine warty pig. And also one of the, shall we say, Highlights also of our exhibit at the Eagle Center are our Philippine macaques, our only primate species, our monkey species.
Dr. Ibanez calls it a place for experiential learning.
So our tours and our outreach are designed really for people to interact with our exhibits. Meron kaming what we call the Open Classroom Project. This is a project that is designed for kids to learn about Philippine biodiversity in a fun way. So we have education officers who would lead a group of kids, no, and then they look at the different animals and plants within the Philippine Eagle Center. So they would let the kids touch the leaves, no, feel the leaves, describe the leaves, no, look at butterflies, look at insects, draw the animals in captivity, tell something about their experience, seeing the birds.
These experiences, these interactions with the animals, are an essential part of wildlife conservation. The foundation seeks to deepen people's understanding of these animals by going beyond scientific facts and names. They tell stories about the animals and their lives in the wild.
When you say the Philippine eagle, I think majority would think that, oh yes, it's a kind of bird, it's part of the environment, but people could not relate to the idea that these animals, like people, can also feel pain, can also feel happiness, are also sensitive to the environment. So I believe these personalized stories, the challenges that they face, would sort of sensitize people to this idea, and we think that's the only way that we can reverse the issues of wildlife extinction.
By telling these stories, the foundation highlights the many harms that people inflict on the environment, from defacing or destroying the eagle's habitats to hunting and poaching. At the same time, there are also stories of survival.
Also, we have Philippine Eagle Fighter. Philippine Eagle Fighter is a Philippine eagle that was shot when he was still an eaglet. He lost his wing to a gunshot. Our veterinarians had to amputate him, but just like his name, Fighter, he overcame his tragic circumstances. He survived, and now we use Philippine Eagle Fighter as an ambassador to tell the people how shooting and hunting can really destroy the life of a Philippine eagle.
Meeting these animals and hearing their stories should make us reflect on what we can do to protect our wildlife while they're still around. But there are animals whose stories we only hear about when it's too late. Let's pause for a break. When we come back, we'll hear about a natural history museum that has its own way of promoting wildlife conservation. The Bone Collector Museum is an hour's drive away from the Philippine Eagle Center. It's a three-story building located in the middle of a bustling neighborhood in Davao City. You might miss it if you were just passing through the narrow streets surrounding it. But inside, visitors might be surprised by what they'll find on display.
The Boat Collector Museum is a collection of animals not just from the Philippines but from all over the world. Our job is to educate the public to take care of what they have.
That's Dr. Daryl Blatchley, an American marine biologist and the founder and president of the Bone Collector Museum. He established the museum in 2012 in hopes of furthering natural history education in the country, 5 years before the National Museum of Natural History opened in Manila. It began with a childhood interest in wildlife that eventually turned into a personal collection of animal bones. When the museum first opened, this collection had only 150 specimens. Today, Dr. Blatchley says there are now about 11,000, only 6,000 of which currently fit in the museum.
The first floor, you walk through a little set of cowboy looking area there, and it starts off with a Utah raptor dinosaur and a Dimetrodon. And below it is dinosaur bones, fossilized fishes. Then the next one is a 14-foot saltwater crocodile that we gave the name Lolo because Lolo and Lolo, the world's largest crocodile kept in captivity, died the same month and the same year. So Lolo was donated to the museum a month after it died, and we had it on display within 6 months after it died. And then we have an elephant skull and a rhino skull there in the lobby that were donated to us by former President Estrada, which were historical ones that were brought into the Philippines back in the 1980s, but they had been scheduled to be burned and destroyed because they were dead animals from a zoo up in Luzon. So they were donated to the museum. So then you go up the stairs and you get to the second floor. And so then we showed them the difference between dogs, wolves, through selective breeding, how you get all the way down to a pug or a Boston Terrier. And then the difference between herbivores, omnivores, the different skulls and the way the teeth are on it. So then you go from that to another jungle section, which has hornbills, king cobras, monkeys, bats, snakes. There's a 11 or 12 foot reticulated python coming down from a tree, getting ready to bite the head of a baby monkey. That baby monkey was donated to us from a rescue center. We don't go and kill the animals that are at the museum. The monkey was brand new newborn monkey, and monkeys, the same as humans, the kids disobey sometimes. And the baby monkey had gotten away from the mother and tried to jump to another part of the cage or another tree and fallen and broken its head on the concrete floor.
Those are just some of the notable exhibits. Its crown jewel is on the third floor, a 41-foot sperm whale hanging from the ceiling over the museum's marine wildlife section.
And up there we have everything from the world's smallest species of whale, the dwarf sperm whale, to spinner dolphins, to dugongs, and whales from all over here in the Davao Gulf. And in fact, in the last 14, 15 years, we have recovered 76 whales and dolphins here in the Davao Gulf. Of the 76, I think it's 61 or 62 whales and dolphins have died directly due to man. That would be getting caught in fishing nets and plastic garbage inside their stomachs.
These are the stories that the Bone Collector Museum tells about these animals. Next to some of the skeletons on display are the actual pieces of waste that were recovered in the bodies of these animals when they died. These include things like a piece of string, the plastic bottle of a chewing gum brand, and a broken piece from a bottle of alcohol. Some of the other animals come with even more tragic stories.
We have one dwarf sperm whale. Her name is Mercy. When the fishermen caught it, they thought it was a shark, so they speared it to death or stabbed it to death. After it died, oops, it's not a shark, it's a whale. They throw it back in the ocean, it washes up on the beach. And when we opened up the stomach, we found out she was pregnant. So had they given her Mercy, she would still be alive as well as her unborn baby. When you go to a museum anywhere else in the world, every museum I've ever been to never had the cause of death with the animal. We want the reason, the consequences behind the display, why this animal died, but at the same time, what you as the visitor can do to hopefully prevent the next one.
The museum's commitment to wildlife education extends beyond its own displays. In 2019, Dr. Blatchley and the Bone Collector Museum helped conduct the necropsy of a Cuvier's beaked whale that had washed up on the Compostela Valley shore. The incident made global headlines as the whale had been found with 40 kilograms of plastic waste in its stomach. Later that year, Dr. Blatchley was recognized by UNESCO through the Plastic Initiative Awards.
We were awarded number 1 for Asia by UNESCO for environmental education. Do you know who number 2 was? The country of Bhutan, who actually went out and cleaned their whole country. And the students signed a promise that every year, every month, they would go and clean their surrounding villages. They were second place. The museum was first place for the education that we had done to educate the world about the problem of throwing garbage wherever you want.
Local efforts to protect the environment remain an uphill battle. The Philippines consistently ranks high on lists such as the world's top plastic polluters by country and the most dangerous countries for environmentalists. But the Philippine Eagle Foundation and the Bone Collector Museum are not deterred. Though they're in different locations, with different displays and different approaches to talking about animals, they continue to make everyday people part of the mission to care for our flora and fauna. You might call it a symbiotic relationship. Visitors sustain the operations of both places, and both places hold a mirror up to their visitors, figuratively, and they ask, "What will you do?" Which is why the best way to experience the center and the museum might be to visit them back to back, as I did on my trip to Davao back in August. Both places tell different parts of the same story, a story that each of us has a part in. Here's Dr. Ibanez of the Philippine Eagle Foundation again.
And this is something that we would like people to develop. No? Consider each individual of wildlife as having a sort of personhood because we think that can encourage them more to be careful, to be mindful of the possibility that they might be causing pain or suffering to an individual of a species. And this is often taken for granted. No? And this is the reason we believe species are driven to extinction.
And Dr. Blatchley of the Bone Collector Museum.
Hopefully, there would be change so that the country that my sons inherit, your kids, other people's kids, hopefully something would change. Otherwise, it's been a waste of time.
Again, I'm Nina Torralba, PumaPodcast. This was written by myself and edited by Freddy Blanco. Our Teka Teka executive producer is Jill Caro, and our senior editor is Veronica Uy. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or two, and plan your visit to these places together. Of course, don't forget to follow Teka Teka News and Puma Podcast on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening.